Joining me today is Jim Murphy, author of Inner Excellence: Train Your Mind for Extraordinary Performance and the Best Possible Life. As a professional baseball player in the Chicago Cubs organization, Jim Murphy's sense of worth used to revolve around results. He was focused on achievement, but also afraid of failure. But then, when he started coaching professional and Olympic athletes, he often encountered the same limiting mindset. So he became obsessed with learning how the best in the world performed with poise under pressure. And after years of research, he had a revelatory insight. The pursuit of extraordinary performance and the pursuit of the best possible life are the same path. Now he shares what he's learned with us based on the powerful principles of love, wisdom, and courage. He trains us to lead with the heart and live a life devoid of fear, one where you feel truly alive. Jim is a performance coach to some of the best athletes and leaders in the world and a #1 New York Times best-selling author. Welcome to the show, Jim. Nice to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so your book, Inner Excellence, this is really a manual for us, I guess, right? A manual so that we can do what I described in the intro: the pursuit of extraordinary performance and the pursuit of the best possible life are the same path. And you're going to show us how to do it in the book, and I guess also during this conversation. So where do we start?
Yeah, it definitely is a manual. I mean, I spent 5 years full-time writing and research on how to have the most peace and confidence under the most pressure. And initially, it was directed at professional athletes. That was my plan because I was thinking they had the most pressure. But I realize now that you take a lot of Americans and people all over the world working two jobs, kids at home. They don't have off seasons. They don't have coaches like me, and they may have more pressure than the professional athlete. And so this is more for them.
Okay, this is for them. How do we start out though? Like you said, professional athletes are one thing, and then we, ordinary people, we're under a lot of pressure, as you say. But how do we get off that sort of off that bandwagon? What do we do? Where do we start?
Well, I think it's one important place to start is to understand like what you're up against. Self-centeredness is the biggest challenge we face. Getting in our own way, it leads to fear and frustration. And through that self-centeredness, we have these obstacles that come up: over analysis, it's way too many thoughts from way too many concerns, and constantly looking over your shoulder, and this anxiety: what about this, what about that? And just a cluttered, scattered mind. And then the negative thoughts and the judgmental thoughts. This is obstacle number two, is all these negative and judgmental thoughts. And the third big one is self-consciousness, the concern for self-protection. We have this ego that's always threatened. At least this is how I define the ego: the part of your mind that's always threatened, always comparing, never satisfied. And we're created for love. We're created for unconditional love. Our greatest desire is to be fully known and fully loved, and the greatest fear is rejection of that love. And so we have our ego that says, hey, if you get more of the symbols of success, you can be somebody. You're going to get that love. But it doesn't work. And so most people spend their entire lives running on this endless treadmill, chasing their tail, trying to be happier and get better circumstances, when it never works. It's always temporary, if at best.
So how do we, I guess, eliminate that? I don't know if we can totally eliminate it from our consciousness when we are surrounded with, with you have to look better, feel better, have the body of an athlete, look like, if we want to make the comparison to athletes or movie stars or celebrities, you got to have a bigger house, a better car. And it's sort of just, we're buried in that, I guess, social media, all of those kinds of things. So how do we separate ourselves from that so that we are not influenced, but just as you're describing it, that we think that we're going to be happier and more fulfilled if we have all these things, and that's not true.
Well, one of the things that I always start with new clients on is, how do you want to feel in your life? And it's really understanding human behavior. Inner excellence is an in-depth system to learn how to be fully present in the moment, unattached to your goals and dreams. The system of learning self-mastery. And when I think of self-mastery, I think of mastering the ego, the part of your mind that's always threatened. And when I think of mastering the ego, I think of becoming unembarrassable, unoffendable, and unirritatable. So, how do we do that? How do we master this ego? It starts with this understanding like, okay, what do I really want most? I'm created for connection and love. And that's what I want most. And taking a real look at your life. What have I been pursuing? Have I been pursuing the symbols of success or the real thing? The real thing is have that inner peace to develop your heart. And because your heart is the source of everything that you do. So inner excellence is about transforming your heart. So what we do with inner excellence is we train it to love most what's most empowering and to let go of our lower level loves that only lead us to temporary success at best. I had a pro golfer, and he was top 10 in the world, and he said, Jim, I'm too attached to the results of my performance. Like, what do I do? And I said, well, think about this. Imagine there's a kid that loves lollipops and you want to take that lollipop from him easily without a struggle. Is there any way to do it? And he didn't know. I said, well, what if you traded him for a bigger lollipop? What kid wouldn't trade their little lollipop for a bigger one? I said, that's your problem. This is what you need. Your biggest lollipop has been tangible success. I got to get birdies. I got to get a good score. I got to win tournaments. This bottom line, this obsession with outcomes. That's how I've lived most of my life, and I realized that there's a far better way. If you pursue heart transformation, becoming a person of inner peace and inner strength, then you're going to get the best outcomes, and that's only going to be a byproduct. It's not going to be your greatest desire. And so, to have a clear purpose beyond yourself, some mission that you're a part of that's empowering, that's the whole candy store. That's what we pursue.
He's a professional golfer, as you're describing him. And I go back to us, the ordinary person give us an example of that. Give us an example of, you talked about in the beginning, most people are busy. They have two jobs. Mom and dad may have two jobs, and everybody's running around trying to pursue the kinds of things that you say, like stop, take a look at what you really want, your inner connections and love. What would we do if I came to you and I was doing exactly what you're saying, and it wasn't, I'm just crazed with, trying to achieve more things, get more things. What should I do? I have to be aware, I guess, first, right?
Well, anxiety is one of the biggest challenges that everyone faces right now in America and around the world. Just so much fear and tension and violence and so much out of our control. So we really need to simplify our lives. It's just anxiety is a mind with too many thoughts and too many concerns. We gotta greatly reduce the thoughts because the conscious mind is so limited compared to the subconscious mind. We got to get the subconscious mind doing the work. That's where the power is. And so, how do we get out of our own way? Well, we need to narrow our lives down. The most powerful thing you can do is narrow it down to one clear purpose for your life. For example, my purpose is to share God's love, wisdom, and courage with athletes and leaders around the world, or with everybody. Kind of the mission part, the specific part is I love working with athletes and leaders, but it's really everyone that I meet. And so all of my decisions should be made through that lens. And this way I'm not looking left and right and constantly, because in today's culture of social media, there's endless new ideas and people doing different things. And oh, maybe I should do that. Maybe I should do this. And it just creates this clutter and this busyness that dilutes possibilities for us. So we need to narrow our lives down to one clear purpose. We start by how do you want to feel in your life? And how do you not want to feel? And what makes it a little easier for a coach is that I know that basically everyone wants the same thing and everyone doesn't want the same things. For example, think about this. Who do you know that doesn't want to have a life with amazing experiences and deep, enriching relationships where they're learning and growing and feeling fully alive and making a difference in the world? Like, who doesn't want that, right?
Yep.
And who wants to live in constant fear and anxiety? Like nobody. And so I already know what they want most. It's just that people come to me and they come to me with these lower level desires. And when I say they come to me, it's these pro athletes in general, because they're human. This is the same with everybody. Um, every pro athlete, doesn't matter if they're top 10 in the world or they're working at the local gas station. Humans, understanding human behavior means understanding the heart and the subconscious. This is where the power is. And people live, I've lived, most of my life has been this surface level pursuit of tangible success. But the problem is so much is out of your control. And so it created so much fear in my life.
What do you do to, I guess, combat the resistance? Because most of us, if we were going to a coach or going to a therapist, the first thing is there are all these excuses why you can't do that, why I can't, you know, get rid of all of those, I guess, wants or desires that are not good for me, that are not making those connections, that are not making me feel really, truly alive. But we all kind of walk in, I think, with a resistance. How do you break down that? How do you break down that resistance as a coach?
Well, there's several things. One is understanding that most people never reach their potential. We don't even know what our potential is, and most people come far, far from it because of their limiting beliefs. The most important thing about a person is what they believe. What you believe about God, what you believe about yourself, what you believe about the universe, the world, what's possible, what's not possible. This impacts every area of your life. And beliefs are feelings. And we want to make sure that we're getting predominantly positive feelings about our lives and what's possible. And for example, we're not going to do that if we're constantly having negative inputs into our mind with our phone and TV, etc. Here's how you can check. Like when you come to a solitary moment in your life, you're standing in line or you're lying in bed and it's just you and your creator in the dark. What's going on there? Is it filled with, is your mind going to unlimited possibilities, or is it going towards fear and anxiety? Fear and anxiety is trying to be God. It's like, I know what I need and I can't control it, so now I'm really scared, I'm stressed. But the thing is, we don't know what we need. Besides, I mean, you could say, well, I need food and air and water. Um, but the things that you think, like if I were to ask you, what's your top 10 goals that you want to have or achieve in your life? If we did a real deep dive, we might realize that, oh, those aren't the top 10. And in fact, we could take someone's top 10 list of what they want and top 10 list of what they don't want. And if we were to, the truth is, they could be flipped. The 10 things you think are the worst for you could be the 10 best things for you. And the 10 things you think are best for you could be the 10 worst for you. But we don't know when, or if that is. That's why we need to hold our lives loosely and surrender to a power greater than ourselves and not think that we're God and we know what I need and don't need circumstance wise and result wise. I mean, think about golf. When you're teeing off, you want to hit the fairway. That's the goal, right? And so if you hit into the woods, that's bad, right? Well, and this was one of my first talks to the first golf team I ever worked with, the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, BC, 2007. And they're like, yeah, that's bad. I said, why is it bad? Oh, because, hitting into the woods, you're not going to get a good score, etc. And I was like, oh, so it's bad because you didn't get what you wanted. Is it morally bad? Is it evil? The ball went into the woods? Oh, no. Oh, it's just because you didn't get what you wanted. Oh, so is what you've always wanted, is that the best thing for you? So we look at the Masters in 2010, I believe, with there's a playoff, Bubba Watson and Louis Oosthuizen, and Bubba hits the ball into the woods. That's bad, right? He's going to lose. Oh no! In the woods, Bubba had this kind of a social anxiety, but in the woods, he's like in his happy place. And also he's this trick shot artist, and he hits this big looping hook onto the green, and one of the most iconic shots in Masters history. And had he hit in the fairway, he may not have won. But that was set up perfect for him. So this adversity that looks bad, you never know if it's the worst thing for you or the best thing.
Now, you have exercises and techniques in the book. I guess, I mean, this is what you're talking about now, right? That we can actually get into some of these exercises ourselves, right?
Oh yeah. There's
Yeah.
tools and exercises, principles, mindset, disciplines.
Let's take
Shall I,
one. Yeah, go ahead.
shall I share one or two with you?
Yeah, share one or two. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's look at a tool. A tool is something you use in the moment. Like I'm really anxious, I'm really nervous. I got a big performance coming up in 5 minutes. What do I do right now? Well, one tool is the double inhale, and so there's another tool that I call playoff breathing, or this um, it's a rate of breathing of 5.5 breaths per minute. This is the ideal breath rate in general for someone who wants to have a clear mind. If you're not exercising, 5.5. The average person breathing sitting on the couch is probably 15 to 17 breaths a minute. So it's much slower. And so constant, that's another tool, is to practice the what I call playoff breathing, getting it, because when you're under pressure, your heart rate's going to elevate, blood pressure elevate, etc., and harder to think clearly. And so we want to slow down our breathing in general. So practicing the 5.5, and always have your exhale as long, or ideally longer than your inhale. So that's playoff breathing. And I was going to share with you the double inhale is another tool, where we take a long, slow, deep breath in through the nose, and then we're 90% inhaled, and then we do another little sniff. It's like all the way in, and then another little at the very top, hold, and then a longer exhale. So that double inhale, Andrew Huberman, professor at Stanford, calls it the number one way to reduce anxiety on the spot.
When you
So
say on
that,
the spot, so like if you're performing, like you're actually doing it, you're on stage, you're in a play or
yeah,
doing,
yeah.
okay, so right
You're
then
really nervous right now. What do I do right now?
okay.
So that's when we use a tool. And so I just gave you the double inhale and the playoff breathing,
That's
which is the
great. Yeah, well, it's
5.5 breaths a
practical.
minute.
It's easy. I mean, there's no reason why we can't do that. I mean, there are really no excuses for not being able to do that, to be able to relax, to calm yourself down. Okay, with the breathing exercises. Okay, so what else can we do?
So I want you to think about when you're performing or when you're going about your day. We all kind of perform in quotes, like we all want to have a good day, right? We all have our
Yeah.
goals and hopes and dreams and things we want to have happen and don't want to have happen. And so the overall mindset is to learn and grow. It's not to achieve, because there's too much. We set our goals to achieve things, yes, but the daily goal is I just want to get better, because we don't know if our goal is the best thing for us. Is it the best thing to win the ping pong game that you're going to play? Is it best thing to get the sale that you really want? It seems like it, but we don't know. And so that's why the better goal, the more powerful goal, is to learn and grow. And so that overall goal, every day, we want to try and get 1% better, baby steps. And then within that, we have 4 daily goals. And the first goal is to give the best of what you got every day. And recognize, this is important, recognize that most days you're not going to have your best. How often are you going to have a personal best day? Very rare. And also recognize that many days are not going to be good. You're going to have maybe 30 or 40% of your best. And if you're expecting to get 100% out of when you have a 30 or 40% day, it's going to be a very frustrating, anxiety filled day. So
What
what
about
we
when
do
people
is,
say I want to stop you a minute, because what about when people say, okay, so 40% of our days are not going to be good? Is that lowering our standards? I mean, is that
it's
should,
possible. What I
yeah.
meant to say, not that 40% of our days are not going to be good, but it's possible that that statement is correct, that 40% of our days were not very good. That's possible. What I meant to say is some days you're only going to have 40% of your best.
Okay.
And on those days, if you're expecting 100% day, like I'm going to be at my best today, my performance is going to be really, really good. Whatever I'm doing, I'm going to be fully present and engaged and focused, and I'm going to execute. But if you're on one of those days where you only have 40% of all your skills and your abilities and focus and clarity, and you're expecting a great day, it's going to be a day of fear and frustration. So we're only going to give the best of what we have each day.
So expectations are critical, obviously
Oh,
important.
that's huge.
Yeah.
Like Scotty Scheffler, world number one golfer, his caddy Teddy Scott from Opelousas, Louisiana. He also coaches, and he says, you know, what I do with my golf clients is I really try to get their expectations low enough to match what they know they can do, because expectations by definition are a future thing that you want but don't have. It can create anxiety. So number one, we're going to give the best of what we have today.
Okay.
Number two is we're going to be present. There's no fear in the present moment. Fear is a self-centered, in general, a self-centered future thing. What will happen to me? And that's why there's no fear in love. Love is, how can I serve and share and encourage someone else? And so another thing that's important to understand is that being fully present is even more powerful than being confident. Fully confident versus fully present, I'll take the fully present person every time if they're even skilled. Fully confident, you can be careless. Fully present, you've got all your skills available to you. Number three is gratitude. Gratitude is directly linked to inner peace. And that's linked to inner strength, and that's linked to mental toughness. They're all linked to beauty. And then the fourth one is focus on your routines and only what you can control. In today's world, there's so much out of our control and so many things that if you're watching the news all the time, and if the far better if you want to have that information, and I greatly advise a low information diet that Tim Ferriss has kind of championed from years ago. Um, Low information from all sources and a lot of information from sources of wisdom. Then if you're taking in the news, you just want to be very careful about audio video, because it's got 10 times the negative impact on you, because news is famously, if it bleeds, it leads. It's negative. And we just got to be really careful about what we take into our mind and our heart.
Well,
If
see,
you want
didn't
to,
I did this at the beginning of the show. I said we're only going to do audio. We can't take in video at the same time, right?
well, interesting, the flip side is
Yeah.
for things that are empowering, video is more powerful, audio is more
Uh-huh.
powerful. That's why music is so important. If you take music, can have a greatly negative effect depending on the words, or a greatly powerful effect depending on the words. And that's why we want to take music and use it every day to empower, inspire, and create the beliefs that line up with your goals and dreams.
I want to just get, we only have a couple minutes left, but I do want to get back to gratitude, because I always had an issue with gratitude and as I talk to people on my show, and you in particular, gratitude is a good thing. And I always used to feel that gratitude had the connotation of like, uh, I should be beholding to someone, or I didn't earn it, or I should just be grateful for what I get. And that's not what it is.
So I define humility as an accurate view of self, not overinflated and not underinflated. And I have another book that I recently wrote called The Best Possible Life: How to Live with Deep Contentment, Joy, and Confidence No Matter What. And in that book, I ask, what percentage, if you were to divide Michael Phelps' 23 gold medals, if you divide the credit between him and God out of 100, how much does Michael get and how much does he get? How much does he deserve? How much does God deserve? Is it 50-50, 60-40? What is it? And in the book, I put it at 98-2. Michael Phelps has free will, and so he definitely deserves credit that he got off the couch and worked extremely hard and suffered and sacrificed. So he deserves credit. And I believe the max he would get if he took all the credit that he deserved would be 2%. And that's why humility is so closely linked to wisdom.
Okay.
Because if you're arrogant, you're not going to learn. And wisdom is to learn, it's to have an unobstructed view of beauty and connections and possibilities. To know who God is and therefore who you are, what he's doing in the world, and how you can join in.
Humility and wisdom. I'm going to end on that because we have 1 minute left and we want people to read your book, Inner Excellence and Training Your Mind for Extraordinary Performance and the Best Possible Life. Jim Murphy is the author. I've been talking to him today. So, Jim, give us a website and platforms to go to so we can learn more about what you are doing.
Yeah, if you go to innerexcellence.com, you can sign up for my newsletter, and there you'll get the monthly updates, workshops, retreats, um, etc., where I'm talking. And you can also follow me on social media, Instagram, Inner Excellence, Jim Murphy, and all the other usual social media spots. I have a Facebook group. Sign up for that, where we have discussions. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks for being on the show. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
And there was lots of good information. And yeah, so get out, read the book, and we'll follow you. Thank you.
awesome. Thank you.
Joining me today is Giulio Vincent Gambuto, author of Please Unsubscribe. Thanks. How to Take Back Our Time, Attention, and Purpose in a Relentless World. Stressed out and overloaded is seemingly the norm for most people these days. And how did we get this way? Giulio Vincent Gambuto offers a witty outlook for those who are simply done with the constant nonsense that the world demands that we take on, process, believe, and manage all day long. He starts with the premise that life in America in 2025 is relentless. He then breaks down into two important parts to answer two pressing questions. How did modern life get this way, and what do we do about it? He's a graduate of Harvard University and earned his MFA from the USC School of Cinematic Arts. And Giulio has written, directed, and produced film and television content for The New Yorker, Nickelodeon, PBS, E! Entertainment, and many more. And along the way, he has honed his comedic storytelling voice at the mic, performing stand-up comedy at some of the most iconic comedy venues. Welcome to the show. Nice to have you on, Giulio.
Thank you, Catherine. Nice to be with you.
Okay, so I guess the crux of all of this, we lead these relentless lives. We just keep on going, and we don't pay attention, and we're just bombarded with all the social media and all the stuff that's out there, right? Okay. Um, so how did this happen? That's I guess the first question, which I'll
Yeah,
go
it's,
in yeah,
I mean, it happened pretty intentionally, right?
yeah.
It was designed this way by many, many large forces, and I'll call them forces in our society, not necessarily maliciously, but simply to to make it okay that we be always on. The way that the internet and all of the media that is designed for the internet is really architected is to be constantly 24/7, not only captivating and engaging, but clickable. And we all know this. We've all lived it. We've all seen it. But this is really a major shift in the way that business works and commerce works. If you make data unlimited, which has been sold to us as sort of the fountain of youth, right? um, you remove limits, you remove parameters, and you see a lot of real cultural erosion, which is, I think, what we're seeing.
So there are no boundaries, is what you're saying, and no boundaries, and then we're addicted at the same time, right?
Fully. I mean, the addiction part of it is just now we're starting to really understand what that means. We're starting to see what it means for our children. Where now there's actually data out, whereas there really wasn't 10, 15 years ago. But the part of it that I think is most concerning for me is that we have sort of moved to these systems and redesigned all of our economic models around them. So, for example, I work in entertainment primarily. And so when you deal with a Hollywood corporation, you're no longer dealing with the same type of models, meaning now they're not going to take any risk at all on the creative projects that they take on and distribute. And all that risk is being pushed onto the individual artists. So I think you're seeing that in all sorts of media and all sorts of industries where the risk is really being moved from the large corporate force to the individual, whether it's a doctor's office or a radio show or, whatever that might be. We, the individuals or the smaller community organizations, whatever they may be, are taking on all of the risk in order to create and put out into the world what we put out. And that's a really big shift from, say, who we were as a society and as a business culture in, the 90s and before.
Okay, talk more about that risk. So how did we, okay, you mentioned radio, film, all, so how does that work? I mean, how are we accepting that risk? What's happening
Sure.
in real time? Yeah,
So I'll give you the example of like the creator economy, right? Which I think you and I are very familiar with in certain ways, right?
yeah.
So instead of, say, a Hollywood studio saying, "Oh, we really want to make this comedy." And so what we're going to do is we're going to find an incredible script and incredible actors, and we are going to put $20 million into it. I'm just giving you a number. That number could be 100 million. It could be
Yeah,
whatever, right?
yeah.
Um, and we're going to take the financial risk with this talent and this script and this person, whether that is a star or not. Now they're saying, you know what? You, the filmmaker, you go take the risk, you raise the money, you go find the talent, you put it together. And if we like it, then we'll just buy it, license it, and distribute it. So that model where they're no longer actually doing the creating, but they're actually passing the creator on to this creator economy means that those of us who are in the creator economy are taking the risk every day with our, with financially, emotionally, creatively. And so now basically what you see across the internet with influencers and creators is you've got thousands, if not millions of people who are willing to create content for free. And then if it bubbles up enough and enough people like it and it goes viral enough, then large companies will step in and say, you know what? We want to put you under our banner and we'll pay you X. And we're also happy to do that, and be sort of recognized for our talent and our product, that we're then willing to engage in those kinds of agreements. So I don't want to get too in the weeds with that because I think the book is about so much more than that. But that's just an example of sort of what that shift has really been and what it means day to day to, the average person.
Well, one thing that you talk about is the fact that when we had COVID, everything began to shift. We began to take a look at ourselves, or I guess there was a pause in all of this kind of behavior. I guess it took a worldwide pandemic to do this, but it was an opportunity for us to examine what we're doing as you've been describing it, and perhaps.
No,
Yeah.
I think the pandemic, no one wants to talk about it anymore. That's totally fine. It's 5 years later. But I think there are deep lessons that we're learning, we're forced to learn, and could probably put into our lives now, about how fast we're moving. I mean, if we remember those moments, the entire world came to a stop. And suddenly that treadmill that all of us were on, whether it was personal, career, whatever it might be, came to a halt. And I think what was illuminated in that moment was that we do a lot of things day to day on autopilot. We do a lot of things day to day because at some point in our lives we committed to them. And so I like to look at that, and I look at that in the book as subscriptions, right? Whether it's your subscription to Netflix that you're paying $12 or $14 for, or it's a emotional contract you've made to a certain social circle or people or colleagues, or deeper, the underlying narratives that we sort of have about who we are in the world. Those are contracts too. And I call them subscriptions in the book because we've really subscribed to a lot of ideas and beliefs about who we are, which I think drives a lot of our consumer behavior and a lot of our behavior, period, in the world. And I think the pandemic really was this eye-opening moment where we got to catch ourselves and see, what are we doing? How are we living? And make a shift. And so I'm still talking about it 5 years later because I think it's really important to learn that lesson, that you can make that shift in your life, in your work, in the world, if you can kind of identify what it is that you're really committed to, and perhaps change that.
And what have you done? Did you do that? I mean,
Oh my God. Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's a great
yeah.
question. I mean, my first sort of like area theater of attack, if you will, was my personal life. And I was sort of on this treadmill, of dating and not dating. I had been single for 10 years. And I think during the pandemic, I realized like, oh, wow, I have been on autopilot. I'm exhibiting certain behaviors that are not necessarily, uh, putting me in the best position to be with someone in a loving long-term relationship. And I got to kind of look at that while I was trapped at home for 6 months in an apartment in New York. And it really allowed me to shift that. And, without being too rosy about the outcome, I did meet someone. I gave it the time it needed to grow. I sort of examined the things that I needed to, quote unquote, unsubscribe from in the kind of, belief system that I had about what a relationship could be and what marriage could be. and now I'm very happily married. So, I don't want to present something that feels so rosy that it's out of reach, but it feels like there are many areas of life, whether it's business or personal or, even just our day-to-day consumption patterns, where kind of an intervention like that might be necessary and important, right? To be able to shift the way that we go through the world.
Okay, so that, I mean, that's your story, and congratulations. It's
Thanks.
yeah, that's great. Now let's go back because I want to, like, you have been, I guess, I don't know, I'm going to say up until that point, but you have had over 30 jobs in your lifetime, or maybe even more now. You've done all singing, dancing, you've been a waiter, you're in film, you're in, very talented man. Yeah. And where did that come from? You grew up in New York.
I grew up in New York. I grew up on Staten Island, which is obviously one of our boroughs, right? And
Yep.
I grew up in a really hardworking Italian American and Jewish neighborhood. And my parents were the children of immigrants. My dad was a bus driver. My mom was the secretary. Um, and in our family, in the larger family, you either sort of went into civil service, meaning you became a cop or a firefighter, et cetera. Or my uncle was a Broadway actor. And so there was always this tension, I think, growing up of, you know, working hard and making sure that there was a real work ethic, but also this, tap on my shoulder that said, hey, if you really want to be creative, it is a viable path forward. And so I wound up going to a private school on a scholarship and kind of made this academic career, and always did my arts work and creative work as an extracurricular. And then when I went out into the working world, I kind of just decided I'm going to jump 2 feet first into the pool, and it's a deep pool. And I went to film school and have been working in entertainment, and obviously I wrote a book now, so I'm working in publishing. And it has been quite a journey. It's been a roller coaster, if you will, but I love it.
Well, you grew up in a working class background and then you kind of brushed over this, but then went to Harvard. Um, so,
Yeah,
uh, yeah,
it was almost like that TV show Young Sheldon, right? Where
yes, I
they
love
have
that show.
right, they have this child, they don't know what to do with this kid.
Yeah, that was you.
Yeah, I was not a physicist genius, but I was certainly what they called in the 90s gifted and talented, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so
They
really
had programs for you. The
they did. They
gifted.
had
Yes.
programs for these weird kids that were quote unquote, gifted and talented. So um, it, it, it was quite a journey, but I wound up going and getting a scholarship to a private school for 6 through 12th grades, and then wound up going to Harvard. And it's funny because I have my 25-year Harvard reunion in a few weeks, and so I'm
Are
doing
you
a lot.
going?
I am. I'm speaking. I'm going. I'm very excited about it. And but there's been a lot of reflection, right, about what that journey has been.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm definitely in a mode of thinking about it a lot.
Well, you're a person who embraces your world, no matter where you are, or no matter who you're with. I mean, I've only read part of your resume, and so you haven't, you don't seem to have been caught up in just, you're talking about the subscriptions and just doing stuff because you're supposed to be doing it. That's not you. You've done the opposite.
Well, it's interesting because I think that there's a certain when I look at it through the lens of my own life, not to focus on me, but to sort of just give you my experience. I think there has certainly been a real sense that because you went to Harvard, because you've been given so much, there is a certain material outcome that ought to come from that. And perhaps that's just the way that my community growing up saw it. So I think there's a lot of pressure on that. And so when I even look at an arts career or entertainment, I look at it through the lens of like, oh, well, how can it just be like big and flashy and make sure that it like is lucrative and dot dot dot. And so when I look at this work of unsubscribing, what I've really had to do is unsubscribe from that entire narrative, right? And really focus on, why do I do the work that I do? Why is it important to me? Is it related to financial outcome? Is it related to artistic journey? Is it related to creative growth? And so I've had to really sort of look at my life and really focus on, why do I do this, when I could go work for, X, Y, or Z company and make a hell of a lot more. So, that for me has been my journey of subscribing and unsubscribing to these sort of narratives that control our lives and our behavior. It's a very entitled position, and I don't expect anyone's sympathy for it. It's just a matter of sort of, what my journey has been, right? But I think all of us go through journeys with respect to expectation and what you're supposed to be doing, whether that's in a relationship or in life or financially or whatever that may be. And I think the 5 years we've had since the pandemic has taught us a great lesson, if we're willing to learn it, about what is really meaningful and what is really important on this journey of life, and where should we put our time and attention and focus and love. And if we weren't necessarily happy with the outcome of putting it where we were putting it before, how can we change that?
Well, you described yourself as a super gay teen back in the 90s. So what was that like?
Uh,
Well, yeah, what's a super gay teen back in the 90s?
I had a perm in the seventh grade, if that
Uh,
gives any insight into
we
yeah,
got it.
yeah, I was, 13 on Staten Island in New York City, which, some might call the epitome of bro culture in the 90s, at least.
Yeah.
And I was in a floral vest with Capezio shoes, these little dancer shoes, and I had a perm, and I didn't know who I was then, but certainly other people did.
I was,
And I was very much finding myself, and it took a long time to do that. But yeah, I have a lot of respect and love for the community that I'm from. But it wasn't always easy as a kid.
yeah. That when you say it wasn't always easy, yes, back in the 90s, and things have changed. Um,
They have. I think they've
I
changed
think,
certainly in the
yeah, go
major
ahead.
cities. I don't know how if they've changed everywhere, but they've certainly changed in the major cities. And I think there's much more of an awareness. I think politically we've sort of, we're in the same sticking point, sticking place of, you know, having to prove that being different is okay. But that's a whole other conversation, I suppose.
It is, but I was just going to say, the film industry, I think, has been responsible for a lot of the good, good stuff and changing people's attitudes. And you are in the film industry, obviously. So
And definitely, I mean, the storytelling has been so important, right, to what this journey is, to humanize, um, not only the gay experience but the queer experience in general. I hear a lot from, if you will, kind of those who feel that it is, Hollywood has actually gone too far in that regard.
how have
And
they gone too far?
I'm not saying I agree. I'm just saying I
Yeah,
hear.
yeah,
But I think certain audiences are just sort of tired of looking at a show and making sure that there's, a gay character, a Hispanic character, a black character, an Asian character, a white character. Again, I don't agree with this, but I think certain audiences feel like it's such a manufactured way of looking at humanity, and that perhaps our storytelling might be more human if we weren't so intentional about that. Now, obviously, the flip side is the power of representation, which I fully believe in. As a child, I think if I hadn't, seen, well, I wasn't a child then, but if I hadn't seen, Will and Grace or Ellen
yeah.
DeGeneres or any of these stories and people and personalities emerge in the 90s, I wouldn't have understood that I could have a safe and loving life. And so that is not to be discounted, and it is very important. But I think we're still sort of finding our balance, in our national storytelling.
Yeah. Balance. It's all about balance. We seem to, I think as a culture, we seem to, it's all or nothing. We are kind of into that all or nothing.
Totally.
Yeah. And,
Totally. It, yeah,
okay.
we tend to swing that pendulum constantly
Yeah.
and with vigor.
Mhm. Okay, now tell us about this because this keeps coming up. The ultimate, you talk about the ultimate gaslighting and how that relates to your book. What does that mean?
Sure. So, in 2020, sort of, I guess it was only 4 or 5 weeks into the height of the pandemic, I wrote this essay called "Prepare for the Ultimate Gaslighting," and Kathryn, I thought I was writing it for 100 people, right? The thing went around the world in 48 hours to 21
Millions?
million people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was quite a surreal moment. And it's not a moment that, I think could ever be recreated. I think everyone was in their homes and thirsting for voices that would kind of bring some sense to what was happening. And so of course I'm, proud of the reach, but more importantly, I was proud of the message, which was, hey, maybe this is an opportunity for us to think about what we really truly want in our lives, because my hunch at the time was that what was coming was going to be a really concerted effort, specifically by big business and by government, to get us to go back to normal. And again, I don't think it was done with malice. I just think it was done because we have a economy to run in this country, and we have to make sure that the country is functioning. So the concept of going back to normal was very much it was intentional on the part of so many large forces. And what I wanted to say and did say was, hey, as a person, as a human being, maybe going back to normal is not what we want. And maybe it's important to take this moment to reflect on what is normal and what it is that we want in our lives. And it's not my job to tell people what they want in their lives. My only instinct was to ask the question. And so, and with respect to gaslighting, I felt very much at the time, and still do, that the government was, manipulating the reality that we saw, whether that was through messaging politically or through pop culture messaging on the internet, on social media, in their White House briefings, whatever it might be, to kind of create the idea that it was okay to go completely back to normal. Let's go spend $90,000 on an SUV again, and let's go, sort of back to the culture war as it was, and let's X, Y, and Z. So, I put that out there, and the way it relates to my book was really because the book is kind of the evolution of that idea. And I asked the question in the book, well, how did we get to a place in society where we could be manipulated, where the message can be bendable and we can debate even the underlying facts of situations? I'm certainly not the only one asking these questions, but I ask it in the book and sort of look at the evolution of capitalism, the evolution of America, and we've gotten into the subscriber economy not by accident. We've gotten here because we have sort of taken our models and business models and sort of thrown them, put them onto the torch, if you will, or thrown them in the fire and reinvented ourselves as this digital capitalist society, which I think can do a lot of really wonderful, great things. I just think we're still finding it. And I think the last 20 years has been this massive experiment in what can digital capitalism be and look like, and what are the outcomes to it. And I think we're seeing a lot of things that we don't like. And one of them is the ability to manipulate the message, and create realities that are not necessarily true. And so if you think about someone sitting at home, going down some sort of rabbit hole on YouTube, convinced that the world is X, their behavior starts to get warped a bit.
Yeah.
And so I don't assign that to any group, but just in general, as an example, this is what these types of media addictions do to us. And so the call for unsubscribing is really a call to not be exploited and not be manipulated, and to own our power individually and collectively, whether that's saying, no, I don't want to renew my subscription to Netflix, Or no, I don't want to necessarily have 3 gym memberships and run around and pay you hundreds of dollars every month. Or something deeper, which is no, I do not want to exist in the world politically or civically being manipulated. So,
Well, and this would be a whole other show, but AI is going to have an impact on all of those things that you just
massively,
mentioned, right?
massive.
And now, yeah, massive. So, but we only have a minute left. So, it's been great talking to you, Giulio Vincent Gambuto. And his book is Please Unsubscribe. Thanks. How to Take Back Our Time, Attention, and Purpose in a Relentless World. So, Giulio, give us a website, platforms to go to so we can get more information
Sure.
about
So
you.
if you want
Yeah.
to learn more about me, I'm at Julio, which looks like Julio, Julio,
Uh-huh.
Vincent.com. And the book is available at Barnes& Noble. It was a pick of the month in August 2024. It's still out on the table in paperback. And yeah, it's doing really well. And I hope you get the chance to read it.
Great. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks so much for being on the show. I wish
Same
we